The
See that
morning
spot
sun
right there?
broke across the
Get that
Nebraska
clean.
horizon like a promise
Like
that
this?
Marcus
Looks
Kane no
great.
longer
Almost
believed
got it.
in. He stood on the sagging porch of his farmhouse, coffee cup trembling slightly in calloused hands, staring at the envelope that had arrived yesterday from First National Bank. The words foreclosure and final notice blurred together in his vision, not from tears, but from the kind of exhaustion that settles into a man's bones after 4 years of losing battles. 60 acres of prime farmland stretched before him, land that had fed his wife's family for 3 generations. Now it lay cracked and thirsting, the irrigation system broken for the second summer in a row. The repair estimate sat inside on the kitchen table next to the medical bills that never seemed to shrink, next to Emma's school supply list for 2nd grade, next to the mortgage statement showing he was 4 months behind. 42 years old, and Marcus felt ancient. The screen door creaked behind him, that familiar sound that meant his daughter was awake. Emma appeared in mismatched socks, her blonde hair a wild nest from sleep, clutching the stuffed alligator she called Dr. Scales. At 7 years old, she had her mother's green eyes and her mother's way of seeing straight through his carefully constructed walls. "Is the tractor still broken?" she asked, her voice small but determined. Marcus set down his coffee and knelt to her level, forcing his face into something resembling confidence. "Yes, sweetheart, but we'll figure it out. We always do." Emma nodded with a solemnity that no child should possess. "Dr. Scales says we should buy a magic tractor that fixes itself." Despite everything, Marcus smiled. The kid had her mother's imagination too. That would be something, wouldn't it? Inside, the kitchen told the story of their slow decline in mundane details. The refrigerator hummed louder than it should, a death rattle Marcus recognized but couldn't afford to address. The linoleum floor showed wear patterns where Sarah used to stand at the stove, as that Marcus avoided walking on when he could. 4 years since the cancer took her, and he still set the table for 3 sometimes, catching himself only when he reached for the 3rd plate. He had been a different man then. Marcus Kane, aerospace engineer, working on satellite propulsion systems for a defense contractor in Denver. The salary had been good, over $90,000 a year with benefits and retirement matching. They had owned a modest house in the suburbs, took vacations to national parks, saved for Emma's college fund. The future had seemed secure, mapped out in spreadsheets and 5-year plans. Then Sarah got sick, and the diagnosis came with an expiration date that proved horrifyingly accurate. She had wanted to die here, on her family's land, under stars unpolluted by city lights. So Marcus had quit his job, liquidated their savings, sold their Denver house to pay off Sarah's parents' mortgage on the farm. They had moved back with 18 months to say goodbye. Those months had been simultaneously the longest and shortest of his life. The medical bills had consumed everything. Insurance covered some treatments, but not the experimental therapies that offered false hope. Not the hospice care at the end. Not the funeral that Sarah had planned herself because she didn't want Marcus making those decisions while drowning in grief. By the time she died, their savings were gone. The Denver house money was gone. Marcus was left with 60 acres he didn't know how to farm, a 7-year-old daughter who had watched her mother waste away, and debt that grew faster than crops ever could. Now he was just a farmer who couldn't farm, a single father who couldn't provide, a man watching his daughter wear shoes 2 sizes too small because new ones weren't in the budget. Emma pushed her breakfast cereal around the bowl, creating whirlpool patterns in the milk. "The kids at school say we're poor." Marcus's chest tightened. "What did you tell them?" "That we're rich in love. That's what Mama used to say." The words hit him like a punch. Sarah had said that, usually while laughing at their modest circumstances back in Denver, back when modest meant they couldn't afford a second car, but could still pay bills on time. The phrase had meant something different then, something warm and optimistic. Now it sounded like the kind of thing people said when they had nothing else left. He reached across the table and took Emma's small hand. "Your mama was right. And you know what else? Things are going to get better. I promise." It was a promise he had no business making. After dropping Emma at school, Marcus sat in his truck in the parking lot longer than necessary, watching her disappear into the building. She wore a jacket that was too thin for the cooling autumn mornings, pants that showed her ankles because she had grown 2 inches over the summer. Last week, another kid had called her Raggedy Ann, and Emma had come home with that too bright smile she used to hide hurt. The smile that broke Marcus's heart because Sarah had used the same one near the end, pretending everything was fine when they both knew it wasn't. He had never felt more like a failure. The glove compartment held $217 in cash, money he had been rationing, stretching every dollar until Washington's face wore thin. It was supposed to last until the first of next month, cover gas and groceries and whatever small emergency inevitably arose. But this morning, driving past the county fairgrounds, he had seen the banner for the Thompson Estate auction, and something in him had shifted. Albert Thompson had been a legend in these parts, an industrialist from the early 1900s who had made his fortune manufacturing agricultural equipment. His great-grandson had died last month without heirs, and the entire estate was being liquidated. Farm equipment, tools, antiques, everything accumulated over a century of wealth. The auction was today. Marcus needed parts for his broken tractor. New parts cost thousands. Used parts from an auction might cost tens or hundreds. It was the kind of desperate math that governed his life now. The fairgrounds buzzed with activity when he arrived, trucks and trailers crowding the gravel lot. Men in work clothes clustered around equipment, appraising, calculating, their voices a low rumble of technical assessments. Marcus recognized several faces from town, farmers who were doing better than him, men whose wells hadn't run dry and whose wives hadn't died and left them drowning in debt. He kept his head down and moved through the crowd, trying to become invisible. His engineer's training kicked in automatically as he surveyed the equipment, cataloging what might be useful, what might be compatible with his ancient John Deere. A fuel pump that looked promising, a hydraulic cylinder that might work with modification. Even a decent set of wrenches would help, since half his tools had been sold months ago to make a mortgage payment. For 2 hours, he watched items go up for bid, watched prices climb beyond his meager budget. The fuel pump sold for $85 to a farmer who barely glanced at it before bidding. A transmission housing went for $130 to someone who arrived in a new truck. Each lost opportunity tightened the knot in his stomach. He was about to leave, to accept that even this desperate gamble was beyond his means, when he saw it. At the far edge of the auction yard, half hidden by weeds and morning shadow, stood something that didn't belong in the 21st century. It was massive, easily 12 feet tall at its highest point, constructed of riveted iron plates blackened by a century of exposure. Two enormous wheels, each taller than Marcus, flanked a cylindrical boiler from which a smokestack rose like an industrial monument. Rust covered every surface like a disease, but beneath the decay, Marcus could see the ghost of craftsmanship, of an age when machines were built by hand to last forever. A steam tractor. Not just any steam tractor, but one of the legendary Colossus models from before World War I. His engineer's mind sparked to life for the first time in months, pushing through the fog of exhaustion and depression. He had studied machines like this in college, in a history of technology course he had taken as an elective during his undergraduate years. The Colossus series, manufactured between 1916 and 1918 by Thompson Industrial Works, had been revolutionary for their time. 30-horsepower engines that could pull loads no horse team could match, machines that had transformed American agriculture in the brief window before internal combustion engines made steam power obsolete. This one still wore its brass manufacturer's plate, visible even through the grime. Colossus Model 7, serial number 0247, manufactured 1917. Marcus ran his hand along the boiler's flank. The metal was cold despite the morning sun, pitted and rough like ancient bark. Something about the machine called to him, not just the engineer's appreciation for historical technology, but something deeper, more primal. This iron beast had survived a century, had outlived its builders, had witnessed the transformation of everything around it. It had endured through 2 world wars, through the Great Depression, through the rise and fall of the very industry that had created it. It had endured, just like Marcus was trying to. An auction worker noticed his interest and wandered over, thumbs hooked in his belt. That old monster hasn't moved since Eisenhower was president. Thompson himself hauled it back from Illinois in the 50s, thought he'd restore it for some museum. Never got around to it. Been sitting here ever since. Does it have any value? Marcus asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it confirmed. The worker shrugged. Scrap value, maybe. Few hundred pounds of iron. But the cost of hauling it away probably exceeds what you'd get for the metal. Nobody makes parts for these things anymore. It's just a curiosity now. A relic. The auctioneer eventually made his way to the Colossus, clipboard in hand, looking skeptical about the whole enterprise. All right, folks, antique steam tractor, as is where is, no guarantees on condition or function. Who'll start me at $500? Silence greeted the opening bid. $250 then. A few men exchanged glances, but no hands rose. These were practical men who saw only a ton of worthless scrap, a monument to obsolete technology that would cost more to move than it could ever be worth. $100. The auctioneer's voice held a note of desperation now. More silence. Someone in the crowd laughed. $50 then. Come on, folks. This is a piece of history here. You could restore it, put it in a museum, use it as lawn art. $50. Marcus felt his hand rising before his brain caught up with the action. $1. Laughter rippled through the remaining crowd like wind through wheat. The auctioneer's eyebrows shot up and he grinned, clearly amused. Well, now we got ourselves a historian. $1 American. Anyone want to go too? The laughter continued, but no one bid. These were men who measured value in practical terms, in what a thing could do today, not what it had done a century ago or what it might symbolize. Going once at $1. The auctioneer raised his gavel. Going twice. Last chance, folks. Sold to the gentleman in the Huskers cap for $1 American. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed across the yard. And just like that, Marcus Kane owned a 107-year-old steam tractor he had no use for and couldn't afford to move. The logistics consumed the rest of the day and nearly all his remaining cash. The auction house had a crane but charged $200 to load the Colossus onto a borrowed flatbed trailer. Marcus paid it, watching his grocery money vanish, too committed now to back out. He signed papers he barely read, his mind already spinning with regret and rationalization. What had he done? How would he explain this to Emma? How would he explain it to himself? He had just spent their food money on a rusted monument that served no purpose except to mock his poor decisions. The crane operator shook his head as the chains went taut around the Colossus. This thing probably weighs 4 tons. Hope your trailer can handle it. The ancient machine rose from the earth where it had rested for decades, mud and roots clinging to its wheels like the ground was reluctant to release it. The Colossus made sounds as it lifted, groans and shrieks of metal that had been stationary for so long it had forgotten how to move. For one heart-stopping moment, Marcus thought the chains would snap and the whole mass would come crashing down. But the old iron held, swinging ponderously through the air before settling onto the trailer with a thud that shook the ground and tested every weld in the flatbed's frame. People stared as Marcus drove home, taking back roads to avoid the highway patrol and their questions about his load. The Colossus dominated his rearview mirror, an iron ghost from another age, a physical manifestation of either the worst or best decision he had made since Sarah died. He couldn't tell which yet, but when he pulled into the farm at dusk, the setting sun caught the Colossus's bulk and painted it in shades of orange and red. For just a moment, it glowed like embers of some ancient fire still burning inside, and Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not hope exactly, but something adjacent to it. Possibility, maybe. Or just the desperate optimism of a man who had nothing left to lose. Emma was waiting on the porch, her face pressed against the screen. She burst out the door as Marcus killed the engine, running toward the trailer with her eyes huge as dinner plates. Dr. Scales clutched Forgotten in one hand. "Daddy," she breathed, stopping at the trailer's edge and staring up. "You bought a robot." "Not a robot, sweetheart. It's a steam tractor. Very old, used to help farmers a long time ago." She circled the trailer slowly, taking in the machine from every angle, her child's imagination already transforming rust and iron into something magical. "It looks like it's sleeping, like a giant sleeping robot waiting for someone to wake it up." Marcus climbed down from the truck, every joint aching from tension and physical labor. "Maybe it is. Can we wake it up?" The question, asked with such innocent hope and absolute faith in her father's abilities, nearly broke him. His throat tightened. "I don't know, Em, but we can sure try." They spent the next 2 hours carefully unloading the Colossus, Marcus using come-alongs and wooden ramps and every bit of engineering knowledge he possessed. Emma helped where she could, fetching tools and offering encouragement, treating the whole endeavor like the adventure she believed it to be. By the time the machine rested on solid ground beside the barn, full darkness had fallen and stars emerged overhead, the same stars that had watched this iron beast labor in fields a century ago. Emma stood beside him, her small hand finding his and squeezing. "Are you sad, Daddy?" The question surprised him. Why would I be sad? "You have your thinking face, the face you make when you miss Mama." Marcus knelt and pulled her into a hug, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling the small, solid warmth of her against his chest. "I do miss Mama. Every single day, every single minute. But I'm not sad right now. I'm wondering what secrets this old machine might have. If maybe there's a reason it ended up here with us." "What kind of secrets?" "The good kind, I hope. The kind that help us." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "Now let's get you to bed. It's way past bedtime and you have school tomorrow. Will you tell me a story?" "Always." That night, after tucking Emma into bed with Dr. Scales clutched under her chin, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a beer he couldn't really afford, staring at the single-dollar bill that represented everything he had gambled. It was the best and worst purchase of his life. The Colossus represented everything he had lost. This monument to American ingenuity and mechanical mastery. This thing he understood in his bones from his years as an engineer. But it also represented one more thing he couldn't fix, couldn't make useful, couldn't transform into the miracle they desperately needed. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, Marcus dreamed of Sarah. She stood in a field of wheat that didn't exist anymore, the grain golden and endless, swaying in a breeze that carried the scent of summer. She was healthy in the dream, the way she had been before the cancer, her hair long and dark, her smile reaching her eyes. "You bought a steam tractor," she said, laughing that bright laugh he hadn't heard in 5 years. "With what money?" $1. Everything I had left." She reached out, and her hand was warm against his face, real in the way dream touches never are. "That's very you, spending everything on something impractical and beautiful." She smiled. "The best things cost almost nothing, Marcus. Remember that. It's not about the money. It's never about the money. But I need money to keep the farm, to take care of Emma. You need faith in yourself, in the universe, in the possibility that sometimes broken things lead us to what we need." Her image started to fade. "Trust the path, Marcus, even when it doesn't make sense." He woke before dawn with the dream still vivid, Sarah's words echoing. Trust the path. He didn't know what path she meant, didn't know if it was just his subconscious trying to justify a terrible decision. But he felt more settled than he had in months, as if some part of him that had been clenched tight since her death had finally relaxed. Sunday morning arrived cool and bright, the kind of Nebraska autumn day that makes you understand why people endure the brutal winters. Emma was up at dawn, already dressed in her miniature overalls that she called her work clothes, the ones with permanent grass stains on the knees. She stood at his bedroom door, bouncing on her toes until he opened his eyes. "Today's the day we look inside the robot's heart." Marcus groaned and checked the clock. "It's 6 in the morning, Em. The heart won't look inside itself, Daddy, and we have work to do." She had a point, and more importantly, she had Sarah's determination. That quality of deciding something would happen and then making it so through sheer force of will. They gathered supplies, wire brushes and rags and a bucket of soapy water. WD-40 that Marcus had been hoarding for months. His ancient toolbox that had been his father-in-law's. The one good thing he had inherited along with the failing farm. As they approached the Colossus in the clear morning light, Marcus saw it with fresh eyes. It truly was massive, dwarfing his modern tractor, a monument to an age when bigger was always better, and machines were built by human hands to outlast their creators. He lifted Emma onto the operator's platform, testing the metal first to ensure it would hold her 30-pound weight. It groaned but held. Her eyes went wide as she surveyed the array of levers and gauges and valves, all frozen with rust and time, all speaking of an era when operating a machine required intimate knowledge of steam pressure and combustion and mechanical advantage. "This is where the driver sat?" Marcus nodded, joining her on the platform and pointing out the controls. "This lever here engaged the drive wheels. These valves controlled steam pressure. This gauge told you how hot the boiler was running. Everything had to be monitored constantly. One mistake, and the whole thing could explode." Emma's eyes got wider. "Explode?" "Well, that didn't happen often, but it could." Marcus smiled. "That's why only trained engineers operated these machines. It took skill and knowledge and constant attention. Like being an astronaut?" The comparison made him laugh. "Yeah, sweetheart. Kind of like being an astronaut. They spent the morning cleaning, scrubbing away decades of grime and oxidation and bird droppings. It was meditative work, the kind that let the mind wander while the hands stayed busy. Beneath the Colossus's original paint emerged in patches, a deep forest green with gold pinstriping along the boiler. The colors faded but still visible. The craftsmanship revealed itself in details Marcus hadn't noticed before. The precision of the riveting, each one perfectly formed and spaced. The cast iron fittings that had been poured in molds and then hand finished. The brass fixtures that still held their luster under decades of tarnish. Neighbors drove by slowly, clearly curious about the strange new addition to the Kane property. A few stopped to ask questions, their expressions shifting from skepticism to interest as Marcus explained the machine's historical significance. No one asked why he had bought it or how he had paid for it. Small-town courtesy meant not questioning a man's decisions directly, even when those decisions seemed questionable. By midday, the exterior gleamed. Not new by any stretch, but dignified, a relic restored to something approaching its former presence. Emma had worked with surprising determination for a 7-year-old, her small hands scrubbing fittings and polishing brass, taking pride in their work. She stood back now, hands on hips, surveying what they had accomplished. Now can we look in the heart? Marcus had been avoiding this moment, the firebox door that led into the boiler's interior. It represented the real mystery, the question of whether anything inside could be salvaged or understood or made to function again. But Emma's expectation was absolute, and he had promised. He selected a long wrench from the toolbox and approached the firebox door. It was latched with a simple hook and eye mechanism, but rust had fused the metal parts into a solid mass. Marcus applied penetrating oil, let it soak, then tried to work the latch. Nothing. More oil, more waiting. On the third attempt, something gave way with a shriek of protesting metal that made Emma jump and clap her hands over her ears. The door swung open with surprising ease once the latch released, releasing a puff of ancient ash and the smell of fires dead for decades. The scent brought Marcus back to his childhood, to camping trips with his own father, to a time before responsibility and loss had defined his existence. Marcus shone his flashlight inside, expecting to see the characteristic fire tubes that would have carried heat through the water jacket, the engineering solution that had made these machines viable. Instead, the beam revealed something wrong. The interior wall looked smooth where it should have been textured with tube openings, and when he rapped his knuckles against it, the sound came back dull and thick, absorbed rather than reflected. That's not right. Emma leaned in beside him, fearless in the way only children can be. What's not right? This wall. Marcus moved the light systematically across the surface. It shouldn't sound like this. There should be tubes here, openings, a different structure entirely. This is wrong. He studied the interior more carefully and found it. A seam, barely visible under the soot, hidden by the darkness and the assumption that what you were seeing was what should be there, but definitely present once you knew to look for it. Not a crack or damage from age, but a deliberate join welded with a precision that didn't match the riveted construction of the original machine. Someone had added a false wall inside the firebox, creating a hidden space between the outer boiler and this inner chamber. This wasn't original construction. This was a modification, something added after manufacture, carefully integrated to look like part of the design but serving a completely different purpose. Marcus's mind spun through possibilities. A structural repair after damage, but the welding was too sophisticated, too perfectly integrated. This wasn't a fix. This was an intentional alteration. Someone had gone to considerable trouble to create a hidden compartment inside the boiler itself. "Daddy," Emma whispered, pressing close to his side, "there's something in there. I can feel it." The conviction in her 7-year-old voice raised the hair on his arms. "You can feel it?" She nodded solemnly, her small hand reaching toward the seam. "It's like when you know someone's watching you, even though you can't see them. There's something waiting in there, something important." Marcus had learned to trust Emma's intuitions. She had always had them, even before Sarah died. His wife used to call it Emma's knowing, that uncanny ability to sense things just before they happened or understand things she had no logical way of knowing. Sarah would say Emma got it from her grandmother, who had reportedly had the same gift, the same connection to something beyond simple perception. He retrieved his angle grinder from the barn, checked that Emma was at a safe distance behind him, and fired up the tool. The spinning disc bit into the seam with a shower of golden sparks. The sound was unholy, metal shrieking against metal, echoing inside the boiler like screams. After 5 minutes of careful cutting, Marcus had worked along 3 edges of what he now believed was a removable panel. He killed the grinder, and the sudden silence felt profound, heavy with anticipation and possibility. Using a pry bar, he worked the cut edges carefully. The panel resisted, held by more than a century of oxidation and settled weight, then gave way suddenly with a groan. It bent outward, revealing a cavity approximately 2 feet square and a foot deep, a space that shouldn't exist according to any engineering diagram of a Colossus steam tractor. Inside, wrapped in oiled canvas darkened by age but still intact, were rectangular shapes. 3 bundles, each about the size of a hardcover book, each carefully wrapped and preserved against time and decay. Marcus's hands trembled as he reached in and lifted out the first bundle. It was heavier than he expected, far denser than he anticipated, the weight concentrated and solid in a way that made his pulse quicken with recognition. He carried it to a clean tarp he had spread on the ground earlier and set it down gently, Emma hovering at his elbow. "What is it?" she whispered. "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but I think it's something important." He cut the twine binding the canvas with his pocket knife, then carefully peeled back the fabric. The morning sunlight caught what lay inside, and the world seemed to stop, time itself pausing to acknowledge the moment. Gold, not brass, not copper or bronze or any other metal that might tarnish to a golden color. This was gold, real gold, unmistakable in its color and weight, in the way light moved across its surface. 5 bars of it, each stamped with numbers and a seal showing a crown above a star, each one roughly the size and shape of a brick, but far heavier, far more valuable than any brick ever fired. Emma's voice was hushed with awe. "Is that treasure? Like real pirate treasure?" Marcus couldn't find his voice. His mind was calculating automatically, numbers running despite his shock. Each bar looked to be roughly 10 pounds. Gold was currently trading at around $1,900 per troy ounce, 16 ounces to a pound. Each bar was worth close to $300,000. 5 bars in this bundle alone meant nearly $1.5 million. And there were 2 more bundles still in the cavity. He unwrapped the second bundle with shaking hands that could barely control the knife. More gold bars, 5 more, identical to the first set. But mixed among them were papers, thick yellowed sheets protected by layers of waxed paper that had kept them dry and intact. Marcus lifted one carefully, mindful of its fragility, seeing immediately that it was official documentation of some kind. The header was printed in old typeface, the kind from manual presses. Manifest number 14, Operation Ironclad, property of the War Department, 1919. Below the header were columns of figures, weights measured in pounds and ounces, serial numbers that corresponded to something. Codes he didn't understand, but that clearly meant something to whoever had created this document. At the bottom, a signature in faded ink that was still legible. Captain D. Morgan, with an official seal beside it showing an eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch, the seal of the United States War Department. Emma tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, what does it say?" Marcus read aloud, his voice distant and strange in his own ears. Manifest number 14, Industrial Reconstruction Shipment. It lists weights, serial numbers. His eyes moved down the page, taking in details that made increasingly less sense. Shipment rerouted by special order. Rotterdam to New York to Chicago. More words followed, but his brain was stuck on one phrase. 2 words that seemed to contain multitudes he couldn't begin to comprehend. Operation Ironclad. The third bundle contained 5 more gold bars and something unexpected. Something that transformed this from a cache of hidden wealth into a genuine mystery. A map etched onto a sheet of copper, folded carefully, the metal thin enough to bend, but thick enough to survive decades without tearing. Marcus spread it on the tarp beside the gold. The surface was covered in fine lines traced in what looked like red ink or red pencil, patterns that at first seemed random, but gradually resolved into something more deliberate. The lines didn't follow roads or borders or any geographic feature Marcus recognized. They looked almost celestial, like star charts he had seen in astronomy classes. Notations in the corners referenced coordinates, but not standard latitude and longitude. Something else, some other system of reference. In one margin, written in careful script that spoke of an educated hand, hold until recalled. And beneath that, a longer passage in the same handwriting, cramped and intense. The words of someone trying to fit too much information into too small a space. Marcus read it slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. To whoever finds this, what lies before you represents not theft, but salvation. In 1917, with the Great War consuming Europe and victory uncertain, certain men in power saw a future where darkness might prevail. President Wilson and select advisors initiated Operation Ironclad, a contingency plan should the unthinkable occur. Should Germany triumph and America face invasion or collapse? Gold reserves were quietly diverted from official channels and placed in trust with loyal citizens, to be held secret and safe until needed. I, Walter Thompson, was entrusted with this portion of that sacred trust. The war ended in victory, and we all gave thanks. But I was ordered to maintain silence, for reasons that became clear only later. Forces within our own government sought to reclaim what they had authorized hidden, not for the nation's good, but for private gain. I chose preservation over obedience. I chose the safety of this trust over my own peace. If you have found this, then I am long dead, and perhaps the time has come for truth. The gold belongs to no man, but to the idea of America's survival. May you prove wiser than I and braver than I could be. Walter Thompson, 1922. Marcus read the passage 3 times, his hands growing steadier as his shock gave way to something else, to a kind of focused intensity he hadn't felt since his engineering days. Emma sat beside him, quiet for once, sensing that something fundamental had shifted in their world, that the ground beneath them had become different somehow. A secret government operation. Gold hidden during World War I. A man who had been ordered to conceal it, then refused to return it when the crisis passed. And now, a century later, sitting on Marcus Kane's farm in a machine he had bought for $1, was evidence of it all. 15 gold bars total. The math was staggering. Close to $4.5 million at current prices, sitting on a tarp beside a rusted steam tractor on a failing farm in Nebraska. Enough to save everything. Enough to secure Emma's entire future. Enough to erase every mistake Marcus had made since Sarah died. The morning sun climbed higher, indifferent to human dramas and discoveries. Somewhere a hawk cried out, hunting over fields that might or might not be Marcus's much longer. The Colossus stood silent, its secrets finally released after 100 years of patient waiting. Marcus pulled Emma close, feeling the solid warmth of her, grounding himself in what mattered most. "Are we rich now?" she asked, her voice very small. The question cut through everything, forced him to confront what this discovery meant. He looked at his daughter, at her hope-filled eyes that still believed her father could fix anything, at the patched clothes and worn shoes that marked their poverty. He looked at the gold bars gleaming in the sunlight, at wealth beyond anything he had imagined, at the solution to every problem that haunted his nights. Then he looked at the letter, at Walter Thompson's words about forces seeking private gain, about choosing preservation over obedience. He thought about Sarah, about her unwavering moral clarity, about how she would approach this impossible situation. "No, sweetheart," he said softly, the words costing him everything. "We're not rich. This isn't ours to keep. But you bought the tractor. Doesn't that make it yours?" "I bought the tractor. But this gold, it belonged to someone else. It was hidden for a reason, a good reason. And it's our job to figure out who it really belongs to now." Even as he said it, doubt whispered seductively in the back of his mind. Who would know? The gold had been hidden for a century. Whoever authorized Operation Ironclad was long dead. Walter Thompson was dead. Marcus could take this wealth, save his farm, give Emma everything she deserved, and no one would ever connect him to it. No one would ever know. Emma studied his face with those 2 perceptive eyes. "Mama used to say we should always do the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it costs us everything." The words, spoken in her 7-year-old voice, hit Marcus like a physical blow. Sarah had said exactly that, constantly, her moral certainty unshakable, even as cancer ate her alive. She had refused painkillers that might cloud her mind, because she wanted every moment with Emma to be real and present. She had organized her own funeral because she didn't want Marcus burdened with decisions while drowning in grief. She had faced death with more courage than Marcus had faced any single day since. You're right, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Your mama was always right about the important things. They sat together in the morning sun, the gold between them, the colossus standing guard over secrets finally released. Marcus knew with absolute certainty that his life had just changed completely. He didn't yet understand how dangerous that change would be, didn't yet know about the forces that had been searching for this treasure for generations, didn't yet realize that somewhere alarms were being triggered and attention was being focused, and men with unlimited resources and no conscience were beginning to move. For now, there was just a father and daughter, a machine from another age, and enough gold to save them or destroy them. Marcus carefully rewrapped the bundles, his hands moving automatically while his mind tried to process the implications. 15 bars, historical documents of immense value, a mysterious map, and a letter that transformed everything from simple treasure into evidence of something far larger. He needed help. He needed expertise he didn't possess. He needed to understand what Operation Ironclad had really been, what Walter Thompson had hidden and why, what forces might still be protecting or seeking these secrets a century later. But first, he needed to secure what he had found. Marcus looked at the barn, at the locks that had never been used because there had never been anything worth stealing. That was about to change. He stood and helped Emma to her feet. Let's put everything back for now, he said. And then we're going to make sure it stays safe while I figure out what to do next. Is that the end of the adventure? Emma asked, disappointment coloring her voice. No, sweetheart. Marcus looked at the colossus, at this iron beast that had kept its secrets for so long. I think this is just the beginning. Sleep did not come easily that night. Marcus lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the old farmhouse settle around him, his mind spinning through impossible scenarios. The gold was real. The documents appeared authentic. Walter Thompson's letter spoke of government conspiracies and forces seeking private gain. And somewhere out there, if any of this was true, people might still be searching for what Marcus had just found. He rose before dawn and checked on Emma, found her sleeping peacefully with Dr. Scales tucked under her chin, innocent and unaware that their lives had just become infinitely more complicated. In the kitchen, he made coffee with shaking hands and tried to think clearly. He needed information. He needed context. He needed someone who specialized in historical documents and wartime financial operations. The county library opened at 9. Marcus was waiting at the door when the librarian arrived, a woman in her 60s named Mrs. Patterson, who had known his wife's family for generations. She raised an eyebrow at his disheveled appearance, but asked no questions, simply led him to the reference section and showed him how to access the digital archives. For 3 hours, Marcus searched. Operation Ironclad, Walter Thompson, World War I gold shipments, government contingency plans. He found nothing about Operation Ironclad specifically, which was either confirmation that it had been deeply classified or evidence that it had never existed outside Thompson's imagination. But he found plenty about Thompson himself. Albert Walter Thompson, born 1881, died 1956, founder of Thompson Industrial Works, which had manufactured agricultural equipment and held government contracts during the First World War. The company had been investigated in 1910 for irregularities in materials accounting, but no charges were ever filed. A warehouse fire in 1920 had destroyed most company records. Thompson had lived quietly after that, a wealthy man who donated generously to local causes but avoided publicity. One detail caught Marcus's attention. Thompson had purchased 10 Colossus steam tractors between 1918 and 1920, buying them back from the farmers who had originally purchased them, paying premium prices for obsolete equipment. The article speculated he had intended to create a museum of agricultural history, but never followed through. 10 tractors. Marcus had found treasure in one. What if there was more hidden in the others? What if Thompson had created some kind of elaborate puzzle or safeguard, distributing his secrets across multiple machines? By the time he left the library, Marcus had a notebook full of information and more questions than answers. He needed an expert, someone who could evaluate the documents and map, someone who could tell him if Operation Ironclad had been real or an elaborate fiction. He needed a historian. Back home, Marcus searched online for specialists in World War I financial history. Several names appeared repeatedly in academic journals and historical society publications. One caught his eye: Dr. Victoria Cross, Associate Professor of Economic History at Creighton University. Her published research included several papers on wartime asset transfers and financial irregularities during the Wilson administration. More importantly, her faculty profile mentioned she was actively researching lost documentation from financial operations. Marcus called the university and was transferred to her office. A woman answered on the third ring, her voice professional but warm. "Dr. Cross speaking." He took a breath and committed. "Dr. Cross, my name is Marcus Kane. I'm calling because I've discovered some historical documents that I think relate to your area of expertise. World War I era, possibly involving government gold reserves." There was a pause. "What kind of documents, Mr. Kane?" "Manifests, official papers with War Department seals, and references to something called Operation Ironclad." The pause lengthened. When she spoke again, the warmth had been replaced by sharp intensity. "Where did you find these documents?" "That's complicated, but I believe they're legitimate, and I think they might be historically significant." Marcus paused, then added, "I also found other items that support the document's authenticity." "Other items?" "Gold bars, 15 of them, stamped with the same seals as the documents." Another long silence. "Mr. Kane, Operation Ironclad is not something that appears in any official historical record. Most historians dismiss it as a conspiracy theory. Where exactly did you find all of this?" "Inside a steam tractor I purchased at an estate auction. The Thompson estate. The items were hidden in a concealed compartment." He heard her sharp intake of breath. "Walter Thompson, Albert Thompson's estate?" "Yes. Do you know about him?" "I know he was investigated for financial irregularities during WWI. I know there were persistent rumors that he had been involved in something classified. And I know that every historian who has tried to research Operation Ironclad has hit dead ends because there's no official documentation." Her voice grew more urgent. "Mr. Kane, if what you're describing is authentic, you may have found evidence of one of the most significant classified operations in American history. I need to see these documents. Actually, I was hoping you could come to me. I'm in rural Nebraska, and I'd rather not travel with these materials. They're valuable, and after finding them, I've started to wonder if other people might be looking for them too." "That's not paranoia, Mr. Kane. If Operation Ironclad was real, the people involved or their descendants would have every reason to keep it quiet." Victoria's tone became more cautious. "Have you told anyone else about this discovery?" "Not yet. You're the first person I've contacted. Keep it that way for now. Give me your address. I can drive out tomorrow morning. We'll examine everything together and decide what to do next." After providing directions, Marcus hung up and sat staring at his phone. He had just told a complete stranger about the gold, about the documents, about everything, but what choice did he have? He couldn't evaluate these materials himself. He couldn't determine their authenticity or significance. And Victoria Cross was exactly the kind of expert who could help him understand what he had found. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Marcus made his first mistake. He called his sister Kate in Omaha, wanting to tell someone in his family what had happened, needing to share the burden with someone he trusted completely. "Kate, something incredible happened. I found something in that old tractor I bought, something valuable." His sister's voice came through tired but concerned. "Marcus, it's late. What are you talking about?" "Gold, historical documents, evidence of some kind of government operation from World War I. I'm meeting with a historian tomorrow to figure out what it all means." Silence then. "Marcus, are you feeling okay? Have you been sleeping?" "I'm serious. This is real. I have a historian from Creighton University coming tomorrow to verify everything." Kate's voice gentled, the tone she used when she thought he was struggling. "Maybe you should come stay with us for a few days. Bring Emma. We can figure things out together." "I'm not crazy. I'm not imagining this." Marcus felt frustration rising. "I found something important, Kate, something that could change everything for us." Okay, I believe you." Kate didn't sound convinced. "Just be careful, and call me tomorrow after you meet with this historian." After hanging up, Marcus realized he had made a tactical error. Kate would worry. She might tell other people, might mention it to friends or neighbors in that casual way people shared family news. Information would spread. But it was done now, and he was too exhausted to dwell on it. He spent a restless night checking the barn locks repeatedly, jumping at every sound, convinced he heard vehicles on the road or footsteps near the house. By morning, he looked worse than he felt, which Emma noticed immediately at breakfast. "You look like a zombie, Daddy." "Thanks, sweetheart. Didn't sleep well." "Is it because of the treasure? Because of the robot's secret heart?" The way she phrased it, like a fairy tale, almost made him smile despite his exhaustion. Yeah, something like that. A very nice historian lady is coming today to look at what we found. She'll help us figure out what to do. Is she going to take the treasure away? No, but she might tell us who it belongs to. Marcus knelt beside Emma's chair. Remember what we talked about? About doing the right thing even when it's hard. Even when it costs us everything, Emma recited. I remember. The innocence in her voice, the absolute certainty that doing right was possible and worthwhile, steadied something in Marcus. Sarah's legacy lived on in their daughter, this unwavering moral clarity that refused to be corrupted by need or fear or greed. Der Victoria Cross arrived at 10 a.m. in a silver sedan, emerging with the purposeful movements of someone used to field work. She was younger than her credentials suggested, mid-30s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and glasses that framed intelligent, assessing eyes. She wore slacks and a blazer over a simple shirt, professional but ready for physical work if needed. Mr. Kane? She extended her hand and Marcus shook it, noting the firm grip. Thank you for contacting me. I drove up from Omaha this morning. Your discovery sounds extraordinary. Come in. I have everything laid out in the kitchen. Inside, Victoria met Emma with a smile that seemed genuine. And who's this? I'm Emma. I'm 7. I helped find the treasure. Me and Dr. Scales. Victoria glanced at the stuffed alligator clutched in Emma's arms. Dr. Scales looks very brave. He is. Emma's face grew serious. He protected us when we opened the robot's heart. The robot's heart? Victoria looked to Marcus for explanation. The firebox, where we found everything. Marcus gestured toward the kitchen. Can I get you coffee? Please, Black. They settled at the kitchen table where Marcus had arranged the documents, the copper map, and one of the gold bars as a sample. Victoria's expression shifted the moment she saw them, professional curiosity giving way to something approaching awe. She pulled on cotton gloves from her bag before touching anything, then spent several minutes examining the manifests in silence. My God, she finally whispered. These are authentic. The paper is correct for the period. The typeface matches War Department standards from 1918 and 1919. The seals. She looked up at Marcus. Do you understand what you found? That's why you're here. To tell me. Victoria set down the documents carefully. Operation Ironclad has been debated by historians for decades. There are hints of it in budget discrepancies, unexplained gaps in Federal Reserve transfer records from 1917 to 1919, encrypted communications that reference contingency plans. But there's never been proof. Most academics dismissed it as conspiracy theory, the kind of story that grows around any major historical event. She gestured at the manifest. This is proof, documented evidence that the United States government, at the highest levels, authorized the diversion of gold reserves as a contingency fund in case we lost the war. And Thompson was one of the people trusted to hide it. Apparently, Victoria turned her attention to the copper map, studying it with a jeweler's loupe. This is remarkable. It's not a geographic map. These are celestial patterns, star positions. For what purpose? I'd need to analyze it more carefully, but my guess is it's a key to finding something else. Thompson wouldn't have created this unless it led somewhere or revealed something important. Marcus showed her Thompson's letter, watched her read it multiple times, her expression growing more troubled with each reading. He refused to return the gold, she said finally. That suggests the forces seeking it weren't legitimate government representatives, but someone trying to steal it for private gain. She looked at Marcus. That makes this more dangerous than a simple historical discovery. If Thompson was hiding this from powerful people, their descendants might still be invested in keeping it hidden. You think someone could come looking for it? I think you should assume someone already is. Victoria pulled out her phone. I have contacts at the FBI's Historical Assets Division. We should report this immediately, get federal protection for you and Emma while we sort out the legal questions of ownership. Marcus wanted to agree. The thought of FBI protection, of not being alone in this, was tempting. But something made him hesitate. What if the wrong people were notified? What if Thompson's warnings about forces within the government seeking private gain were still relevant? Before I do that, can we research this more? Figure out exactly what Operation Ironclad was, who was involved, what the stakes really are? Victoria started to protest, but Marcus pressed on. Just give me 48 hours. You research from your end, I'll research from mine. and then we bring in authorities with full knowledge of what we're dealing with. Victoria studied him for a long moment. You're afraid of something specific. What is it? I don't know yet. Just a feeling that we should understand this completely before we tell anyone official. Thompson spent his entire life keeping this secret. I want to know why before I hand it over to people who might have agendas I don't understand. After a long pause, Victoria nodded slowly. 48 hours. But if anything happens, anything that suggests you're in danger, you call me immediately and we bring in the FBI. Agreed? Agreed. They spent the next 2 hours going through everything Marcus had found, Victoria photographing the documents and gold bars, taking detailed notes, creating a comprehensive record. She explained what each manifest entry likely meant, translated some of the codes, and sketched out a timeline of gold movements from Europe to America during the final years of the war. The amounts are staggering, she said. If these manifests are accurate, we're talking about tens of millions in gold being diverted at 1918 values. Modern equivalent would be close to $500 million. And Thompson had 15 bars of it. Where's the rest? That's the question. Victoria studied the copper map again. I think this might be the answer. If Thompson created a puzzle using star positions, he might have hidden the gold in multiple locations. 10 tractors? You said he bought back? According to what I found at the library, yes. Then maybe there's more gold hidden in the other 9 tractors. And this map is the key to finding them. The implications were staggering. Marcus had thought 15 bars was life-changing. If each tractor held a similar cache, they were talking about over 100 bars, tens of millions of dollars, and more importantly, evidence of a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of American government during one of the nation's defining conflicts. Victoria prepared to leave, promising to begin research immediately. At the door, she paused. Mr. Kane, you're doing something brave. Most people would have quietly sold that gold and never asked questions. The fact that you're trying to understand the truth says a lot about your character. Or my stupidity, Marcus said. Sometimes they're the same thing. Victoria smiled. I'll call you tonight with whatever I find. In the meantime, be careful. Trust your instincts and keep Emma close. After she left, Marcus stood on the porch watching her car disappear down the road. He felt both relieved and more anxious. He had an ally now, someone who believed him and understood the significance of what he had found. But he had also widened the circle of people who knew about the discovery, increasing the chances that word would spread. He was right to be concerned. That evening, just as darkness fell, his phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus almost didn't answer, but curiosity won over caution. Hello? Silence on the line. Then just barely audible, the sound of breathing. Mechanical, distorted, like someone speaking through a voice modulator. Mr. Kane. The voice was flat, emotionless, processed. You found something that doesn't belong to you. Marcus's blood went cold. Who is this? You need to return what you found. Put it back where it came from and forget this ever happened. The voice had no inflection, no humanity, just calculated menace. You have a daughter. She's very precious to you. It would be terrible if something happened to her because of your poor decisions. The threat was specific and unmistakable. They knew about Emma. They knew where she went to school, where she lived, everything. Marcus fought to keep his voice steady. I don't know what you're talking about. The Colossus, the gold, the documents. We know you have them. We know you contacted Dr. Cross. We know everything, Mr. Kane, and we're giving you one chance to make this right. Return everything and this ends. Keep it and you'll discover how much you have to lose. The line went dead. Marcus stood frozen, phone still pressed to his ear, listening to the dial tone. Someone knew. Within hours of Victoria leaving, someone had called with specific knowledge of what he had found and who he had contacted. That meant they had been watching. Surveillance on his property or Victoria's. Phone taps, something that let them track every move. He immediately called Victoria. She answered on the first ring. They know, he said without preamble. Someone just called and threatened me. Threatened Emma. They knew I had the gold, knew I contacted you, knew everything. Who knew? Victoria's voice was sharp with alarm. I don't know. The voice was disguised, but they knew specific details. They're watching us. Okay, we need to stay calm. Victoria's professional composure returned. Did they make specific demands? Return the gold and documents. Forget everything. Or else Emma gets hurt. That's a bluff. They're trying to scare you into giving up. But Mr. Kane, this changes things. We need to contact the FBI now, tonight. Federal protection is the only safe option. Marcus wanted to agree, but the voice on the phone, the specific knowledge they had displayed, made him wonder if even the FBI could be trusted. No, not yet. I need to secure Emma first. Get her somewhere safe. Then we figure out our next move. Where can you take her that they won't find? My sister's in Omaha. I'll take Emma there tonight. Make sure Kate knows to be careful. Marcus thought quickly. Then I'm going to do something they won't expect. I'm going to find out who's threatening us, and I'm going to end this before it escalates. Mr. Kane, that's not wise. These are clearly dangerous people. They threatened my daughter. Marcus felt cold certainty settle over him. That was their mistake, because now I have nothing to lose and everything to protect. I'll call you tomorrow. Until then, watch your back. After hanging up, Marcus went to Emma's room and found her still awake, reading a picture book by her nightlight. She looked up as he entered. Daddy? What's wrong? How do you always know when something's wrong? I just do. Emma set down her book. Is it the bad people? The ones who want the treasure? Marcus sat on the edge of her bed, marveling at her perception. Yes, sweetheart. Some people found out about what we discovered, and they want us to give it to them. So we're going to take a little trip. You're going to stay with Aunt Kate for a few days while Daddy figures things out. Are we in danger? He could lie, protect her innocence a little longer. But Sarah had always said children could handle truth better than deception, that treating them like they were fragile only made them weak. I think we might be, but I'm going to make sure you're safe. That's my job. Keeping you safe is the most important thing in the world to me. Emma reached out and took his hand. Mama used to say you were the bravest person she knew. Dr. Scales says so too. So I'm not scared, Daddy, because you'll protect us. The faith in her voice nearly broke him. He pulled her into a hug, this small person who trusted him absolutely, who believed in his ability to fix anything despite all evidence to the contrary. Pack a bag, okay? We're leaving in an hour. The drive to Omaha took 2 hours through darkness, Marcus checking his rearview mirror constantly for following vehicles. He saw nothing suspicious but couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Kate met them at her door, her expression shifting from confusion to alarm as Marcus explained tersely what was happening. Keep her inside. Don't take her to school. Don't follow your normal routine. If anyone comes asking about me or Emma, you call the police immediately. Kate's face was pale. Marcus, this is insane. You need to call the police now. Let them handle it. I will. But first I need to make sure Emma is somewhere they can't reach her. Marcus hugged his sister. Thank you for doing this. I'll call you every day. The goodbye with Emma was harder. She clung to him at Kate's door. Dr. Scales pressed between them. Promise you'll come back, she whispered. I promise, sweetheart. Marcus kissed the top of her head. I'll fix this, and then we'll be together again. You be good for Aunt Kate. I'll be brave like Mama. The words followed him all the way back to the farm, a reminder of what he was fighting for and what he stood to lose. Back home, Marcus did not sleep. Instead, he prepared. He moved the gold and documents from the barn to a new hiding place, a root cellar beneath the house that few people knew existed. He set up his old engineering laptop and began searching for information about the Thompson estate sale, about who had attended the auction, about who else might have been interested in the Colossus. And he called Victoria again, this time asking a different question. You said Operation Ironclad was rumored but never proven. Who were the main people theorized to be involved? Victoria, clearly still awake and researching, rattled off several names. Prominent industrialists, senior military officers, even some senators. But one name keeps appearing more than others. Pike Industries. They were a major defense contractor during we manufactured everything from steel to munitions. There were persistent rumors they had been involved in financial irregularities, but nothing was ever proven. The company reorganized in the 1960s, became Pike Financial. They're one of the largest private equity firms in America now. Who runs Pike Financial? Jonathan Pike, fifth generation. His great-great-grandfather founded Pike Industries. And Mr. Kane, there's something you should know. Pike Financial has a history of aggressively protecting their family reputation. They've sued journalists, buried unflattering stories, and there are rumors, never substantiated, that they've used less legal methods to silence critics. You think they're the ones threatening me? I think it's a strong possibility. If Operation Ironclad involved Pike Industries in financial crimes during wartime, if there's evidence of that in Thompson's documents, The Pike family would have enormous motivation to keep it buried. We're talking about their entire fortune being built on treasonous activity. So what do I do? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Honestly, you should give them the gold. Turn over the documents. Walk away and protect your daughter. Sometimes the right thing to do is survive. That's not what you really think. No. What I really think is that Thompson spent his entire life protecting this secret because he believed the truth mattered more than his safety. And I think you're the kind of person who understands that. She paused. I also think you need help. Real help, not just an academic. We need to bring in the FBI, Mr. Kane. Tonight. Right now. Marcus made his decision. All right, who do we contact? I've worked with an agent named Sarah Brennan. She's in the Historical Assets Division, specializes in recovered government property. She's good, she's honest, and she'll take this seriously. I'll email her right now with a summary. You should get a response by morning. Thank you, Victoria, for believing me, for helping. We're in this together now, Mr. Kane. Whatever comes next, you're not alone. After hanging up, Marcus felt marginally better. They had a plan. The FBI would be involved soon. Emma was safe with Kate. He just had to make it through the next few hours until morning, when they could connect with Agent Brennan and get official protection. He made one more check of the property, confirmed all doors and windows were locked, then finally allowed himself to collapse on the couch. Sleep claimed him within minutes, exhaustion overriding fear. He woke 3 hours later to his phone buzzing. Victoria, he answered groggily. Mr. Kane, we have a problem. Victoria's voice was tight with stress. Agent Brennan isn't responding. I sent the email and tried calling her directly. Her office voicemail says she's on administrative leave, effective immediately. No timeline for return. What does that mean? It means either she's on vacation, which is terrible timing, or someone inside the FBI got to her. Put her on leave to prevent her from investigating. Victoria took a breath. Mr. Kane, if Pike has enough influence to sideline an FBI agent, we're dealing with something much bigger than I thought. So what now? Marcus was fully awake now, adrenaline replacing exhaustion. Now we assume we're on our own. No FBI, at least not through official channels. We need to be very, very careful about who we trust. Victoria paused. And Mr. Kane, watch your back. If they can neutralize an FBI agent, they can certainly get to you. After hanging up, Marcus sat in the darkness of his living room, the weight of the situation crushing down. Emma was safe for now, but for how long? He had evidence of something huge, something powerful people wanted to stay buried, and the one person who should have helped them had been taken off the board. He was alone again, and somewhere out there forces were gathering. Dawn came slowly, the kind of gray morning that felt like the sun couldn't quite commit to rising. Marcus had not slept after Victoria's call about Agent Brennan. Instead, he had spent the remaining hours of darkness cleaning his shotgun, inventorying what few weapons he owned, and trying to think like the engineer he used to be. Problems had solutions. Even this problem, with its century-old conspiracy and powerful enemies, had to have a solution. He just had to find it. By 7 a.m., he was on the phone with Victoria again. Tell me everything you know about Pike Financial, their operations, their connections, how they wield influence. Victoria's voice came through tired but focused. Pike Financial manages over $40 billion in assets. They're a private equity firm, which means they buy companies, restructure them, sell them for profit. But they also have extensive political connections, campaign donations to both parties, board members who rotate between government positions and private sector. The kind of deep institutional power that's almost invisible until you cross it. And Jonathan Pike himself, mid-50s, Harvard MBA, took over as CEO when his father died 15 years ago. By all public accounts, he's brilliant and ruthless. Grew the company's assets by 300% during his tenure. There are rumors of aggressive tactics, companies stripped and gutted for short-term profits, while workers lost pensions. But nothing illegal, at least nothing proven. Marcus processed this. So we're dealing with someone who knows how to operate in gray areas, who has the resources to make problems disappear. Exactly. Victoria paused. Mr. Kane, I've been thinking about this all night. If we can't trust the FBI, if official channels have been compromised, we need a different approach. We need to gather enough evidence that Pike can't suppress it. Make the conspiracy so public, so documented, that trying to silence us would only confirm everything. How do we do that? We find the other tractors, the other caches Thompson hid. We document everything, create redundant copies, send them to journalists and historians who can't all be silenced simultaneously. We turn this into a story too big to bury. That could take weeks, months. I can't leave Emma with Kate indefinitely, and I can't bring her back here until this is resolved. Then we work fast. Victoria's tone sharpened with determination. I'll start tracking the other Colossus tractors today. You focus on securing what you've already found, creating those redundant copies. We move quickly and we move smart. After ending the call, Marcus made breakfast mechanically, going through motions that felt strange without Emma chattering beside him. The house was too quiet, too empty. But she was safe, and that was what mattered. He was washing dishes when he heard a vehicle on the gravel drive. His muscles tensed automatically, his hand moving toward the loaded shotgun he had propped near the back door. But the truck that appeared was familiar, a battered Ford belonging to Raymond Frost, who farmed the property 2 miles east. Frost was in his late 50s, thick through the chest and shoulders, with weathered skin and the calloused hands of someone who had worked physical labor his entire life. Marcus knew him casually, the way neighbors know each other in rural areas. They had exchanged pleasantries at the farm supply store, helped each other with occasional equipment loans. But they were not friends, not close. So why was Frost here at 7:30 on a weekday morning? Marcus stepped onto the porch, leaving the shotgun inside but staying close to the door. "Morning, Raymond. Something I can help you with?" Frost climbed out of his truck slowly, deliberately, his eyes already locked on the Colossus standing beside the barn. "Morning, Marcus. Heard you bought something interesting at the Thompson auction. Thought I'd stop by and take a look." The casualness of the statement felt wrong, like someone trying too hard to seem unconcerned. Word spread fast in small communities, but this felt too fast, too pointed. "It's just an old tractor. Probably spend more fixing it than it's worth." Marcus kept his voice neutral. "But it's a piece of history. Seemed worth preserving." Frost approached the Colossus without asking permission, running his hand along the boiler the same way Marcus had at the auction. "These old steam tractors, my grandfather used to talk about them, said they changed everything when they came along, made farming possible on a scale nobody had imagined before." "Your grandfather was a farmer?" "Among other things." Frost turned to face Marcus, and something in his expression had shifted, become harder. He also worked in logistics during World War I, transport operations, moving equipment and materials through the port in New York. He knew Walter Thompson, actually. They were partners in some business ventures. The statement hung in the morning air, loaded with implication. Marcus felt every muscle in his body tense. "Is that so?" "That's so." Frost took a step closer. "Which is why I'm here, Marcus. That tractor belonged to Thompson. My grandfather had a legitimate interest in Thompson's property, an interest that extends to anything Thompson might have hidden inside his equipment." The pretense dropped completely now, the friendly neighbor act replaced by naked aggression. Marcus's hand moved fractionally closer to the door, to the shotgun just inside. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play stupid." Frost's voice hardened. "Thompson and my grandfather were part of something during the war, something that made them both wealthy. But Thompson got greedy. He took everything when the partnership ended, left my grandfather with nothing. My family has been searching for what Thompson stole for 3 generations. Even if that were true, it wouldn't give you rights to anything I found. I bought this tractor legally at a public auction. Legal and right aren't the same thing." Frost pulled out his phone and showed Marcus a photograph. It took a moment for Marcus to process what he was seeing. Emma, at school, in the playground. The photo had been taken yesterday before Marcus had moved her to Kate's house. Beautiful little girl. Be a shame if something happened to her. Rage flooded through Marcus, hot and blinding. He crossed the distance to Frost in 3 strides, grabbing the man's shirt. "You go anywhere near my daughter and I will kill you. Do you understand? I will end you." Frost didn't flinch, didn't try to break away. "Easy now. I'm not threatening your girl. I'm just pointing out that she's vulnerable. That you're vulnerable. Bad things happen in the world, Marcus. Accidents, disappearances. You want to keep her safe, you give me what Thompson stole from my family." Marcus wanted to hit him, to break the man's face for daring to threaten Emma. But violence would solve nothing, would only confirm that he had something worth threatening over. He released Frost and stepped back, fighting for control. Get off my property. I'm going. Frost straightened his shirt, completely calm. But think about what I said. My family has been looking for this for 100 years. We're not going away. Give me what's mine. I pay you fair value, and this all ends. You can keep your farm, your daughter stays safe, and everyone walks away happy. And if I refuse, then you'll learn that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to a man is getting what he wished for. Frost walked back to his truck. You've got until tomorrow to decide. After that, things get complicated. Marcus watched the truck drive away, his heart pounding, his hands shaking with suppressed fury. 2 threats in less than 24 hours. First, the anonymous phone call, now Frost showing up in person. They were escalating, testing his resolve, trying to terrify him into compliance. It was working. He was terrified, but he was also angry, and anger was starting to outweigh fear. He called Victoria immediately. Raymond Frost just threatened Emma. He claims his grandfather was Thompson's partner in whatever Operation Ironclad really was. Says his family has been searching for this for generations. Frost. Victoria's voice went sharp. Give me a few minutes. She called back 15 minutes later. Harold Frost, I found him in the records. He was a logistics sergeant during World War I, worked transport operations in the New York Port Authority. There's a notation that he was investigated alongside Thompson in 1918 for financial irregularities, but no charges were filed. He died in 1962. So Raymond Frost is telling the truth about the family connection. Looks like it, which means we're not just dealing with Pike. We're dealing with multiple parties who believe they have legitimate claims to what Thompson hid. This is getting more complicated. What do? I can't give them the gold, but I also can't keep putting Emma at risk. You do what Thompson did. You create insurance. Make it clear that anything happens to you or Emma, all the evidence gets released immediately. Dead man's switch. The threat of exposure becomes your protection. They spent the next hours setting up exactly that. Victoria created a secure server holding scanned copies of all documents and photographs of the gold. Marcus recorded a video confession explaining everything. They set up automated emails that would send to multiple journalists and historians if Marcus didn't log in to reset the timer every 24 hours. It was crude protection, but it was something. By noon, Marcus felt marginally more secure, but he also felt trapped. He couldn't leave the farm without exposing it himself to attack. He couldn't bring Emma home without putting her in danger. He was a prisoner in his own house, surrounded by enemies who wanted what he had found. Victoria called again in the early afternoon. I've located 3 of the other Colossus tractors. One's in a barn outside Des Moines. One's partially submerged in a farm pond in Kansas. The third is listed in a private collection in Iowa, though the owner hasn't responded to my calls yet. Can you check them? See if they have hidden compartments like mine. I can try. But Mr. Kane, I need to be honest. Going after these tractors will draw attention. If people are watching us, and we have to assume they are, then every tractor we find tells them where to look too. We might be leading them right to the evidence we're trying to protect. Or we might be staying one step ahead, finding everything before they do. Marcus thought about Thompson, about a man who had spent his entire life protecting a secret, creating an elaborate puzzle to keep it safe. What would Thompson want? For the truth to stay buried forever? Or for someone brave enough to uncover it? Let's do it. Find the tractors. Document what's inside. Build the case so comprehensively that they can't suppress it. All right, but I'm taking security with me, one of your former military friends you mentioned. Good. And Victoria? Be careful. These people have already shown they're willing to threaten children. They won't hesitate to hurt you. After hanging up, Marcus spent the rest of the afternoon fortifying his position. He set up motion sensors around the property perimeter. He moved the gold to yet another location, this time buried beneath the barn in a waterproof container. He prepared bug-out bags with cash, copies of documents, everything he would need if he had to run. By evening, he felt marginally prepared, but he also felt profoundly alone. Emma was gone. Victoria was hours away pursuing tractors. He was isolated on a farm surrounded by people who wanted to hurt him, waiting for threats that could come from any direction. His phone rang at 8 p.m. Kate, Marcus, something's wrong. There are men outside my house. They've been sitting in a car for the past 2 hours, just watching. Fear spiked through him. Are your doors locked? Windows secured? Yes, but Marcus, I'm scared. Emma's asking questions. She knows something's wrong. Call the police. Tell them you're being stalked, that you feel threatened. Get them to send a patrol car. I already did. They said they'd increase patrols in the neighborhood. But these men, they're still here, just sitting, watching. Marcus made a decision. Pack a bag, take Emma and check into a hotel, pay cash, use a different name. Don't tell anyone where you're going. I'll call you on this number every day at noon. If I don't call, if anything happens to me, you go to the nearest FBI office and give them everything I sent you via email. Marcus, this is insane. What have you gotten involved in? Something bigger than I understood. But I'm ending it, Kate, one way or another. I'm going to make this stop. After hanging up, Marcus stared at his phone, feeling the weight of every decision that had led him here. He had bought a tractor for $1, found gold that wasn't his, tried to do the right thing, and now his daughter was in hiding, his sister was terrorized, and he was surrounded by enemies. But he also had something they wanted, which meant he had leverage. He just had to figure out how to use it. The next morning brought a different kind of threat. Marcus woke to find his driveway blocked by two black SUVs. Men in dark clothes, professional and armed, spreading out around his property with military precision. This was not Raymond Frost and his rural grudge. This was something else entirely, something corporate and coordinated and far more dangerous. Marcus grabbed his shotgun and positioned himself at a window where he could see without being easily targeted. His phone rang, unknown number. He answered. Mr. Kane. The voice was smooth, educated, nothing like the mechanical distortion from 2 days ago. My name is Jonathan Pike. I believe we have matters to discuss. There it was. The man himself, the fifth-generation heir to an empire built on wartime betrayal. Marcus kept his voice steady. I don't have anything to discuss with you. I think you do. You have property that belongs to my family. Property that Walter Thompson stole from my great-great-grandfather over a century ago. I'm prepared to pay handsomely for its return. Shall we say $5 million? Cash, transferred immediately, no questions asked. $5 million was more than the gold was worth, which meant Pike wanted the documents even more than the wealth. Wanted the evidence of his family's crimes buried forever. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale, Mr. Kane. It's just a question of price. Pike's voice remained pleasant, almost friendly. Let's try $10 million then. Think of what that could do for you to your farm saved, your daughter's future secured, every debt erased, all for a few bars of gold and some old papers that mean nothing to you. They mean enough that you've threatened my daughter to get them. A pause. Mr. Frost. Pike sounded annoyed. I apologize for his methods. Raymond's family has a personal stake in this matter that makes him emotionally unstable. But I assure you, my interest is purely business. I have no desire to harm anyone. I simply want to close a very old account and move on. By bearing evidence of treason. By protecting my family's privacy. Pike's voice cooled slightly. Every great fortune has complicated origins, Mr. Kane. My ancestors made difficult choices during difficult times. That doesn't mean their descendants should be punished for century-old decisions. Your ancestors supplied Germany while American soldiers died fighting them. That's not complicated, that's betrayal. Allegedly. The word was sharp. You have documents you believe prove that. I have an entire legal team that will challenge their authenticity, their chain of custody, every aspect of their admissibility as evidence. Even if you go public, I will bury you in litigation for years. You'll spend every penny you have fighting me in court while your daughter grows up under constant threat. Is that really what you want? The threat was clear. Legal warfare that would drain Marcus financially and emotionally, extend the conflict indefinitely, keep Emma in danger for years. Pike was offering him an exit. Take the money, bury the truth, live comfortably. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. But it was also exactly what powerful men had been doing for a century. Buying silence, burying truth, ensuring that crimes committed by the wealthy never faced consequences, while ordinary people paid for far smaller transgressions. No deal. Marcus surprised himself with the firmness in his voice. I'm not selling, I'm not bargaining, and I'm not hiding what Thompson wanted exposed. You want to bury your family's past? You're going to have to go through me. And I've made sure that killing me only makes things worse for you. Everything gets released automatically if I die or disappear. There was a long silence. When Pike spoke again, his voice had lost all pretense of friendliness. You're making a grave mistake. I've been patient because I believed you could be reasoned with. But patience has limits. My men surrounding your house right now, they can take what I want by force. Or they can wait and take it from your corpse after you have an unfortunate accident. The choice is yours. Your men try to come in here and I start shooting. Self-defense on my own property. How's that going to look in the news? Billionaire's private army invades farmer's home. Pike laughed, a cold sound without humor. You think the news will care? I own newspapers, Mr. Kane, television stations, digital media platforms. I control what people see and what they believe. If you die, you'll be a tragedy. Mentally unstable farmer, depressed since his wife's death, made some poor decisions. People will cluck their tongues and forget you within a week. Your daughter will be left with nothing but the memory of a father who threw everything away for pride. The words hit hard because they contain truth. Pike had the resources to shape reality itself, to rewrite history in real time. But he also had a weakness. He was talking instead of acting, which meant he was uncertain, calculating odds, trying to find the path of least resistance. If you're so confident you can control this, why are we talking? Why not just take what you want? Marcus pressed the advantage. I'll tell you why. Because you're afraid. Afraid that I've already released everything. Afraid that killing me triggers the exact exposure you're trying to prevent. You need me to give you permission, to hand everything over voluntarily, so you can claim it was all resolved peacefully. Smart man. Pike's voice held a note of respect. Yes, I'm being cautious, because I've spent 15 years building my family's empire higher, and I won't risk it on a farmer who stumbled into something he doesn't understand. But make no mistake, Mr. Kane, my caution has limits, and you're approaching them quickly. Then I guess we're at an impasse. For now, Pike's voice went flat. But this isn't over. I'll give you 24 hours to reconsider. Think about your daughter, Mr. Kane. Think about what kind of life she'll have if you keep fighting me, and then decide if your pride is worth her future. The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone, his hands shaking. Through the window, he watched the black SUVs. The men didn't advance or retreat. They just waited, professional and patient, a visible reminder of Pike's power and Marcus's vulnerability. He called Victoria. Pike just offered me $10 million to hand everything over. Did you take it? No, but he's surrounding my house right now with what looks like a private army. I don't think I can hold out much longer. Don't give up. Victoria's voice was urgent. I'm at the first tractor location right now, the one in Des Moines. Marcus, there's another hidden compartment. More gold, more documents, and there's something else. Photographs. Historical photos showing military officers with German officials. I think these are the conspirators, the actual people who set up the betrayal. Can you identify them? I'm working on it. But Mr. Kane, this proves everything. This is physical evidence that can't be disputed. We need to get this to authorities who aren't compromised. Real investigators who will act on it. How do we do that when Pike controls everything? We go public. Massively public. Press conference, live streaming, simultaneous release to every major news outlet. Make it so big and so immediate that Pike can't suppress it before the world sees. Victoria paused. But we need time to set that up. Can you hold out another 48 hours? Marcus looked at the SUVs, at the armed men, at his isolated farmhouse that suddenly felt more like a prison than a home. I don't know, but I'll try. That evening, as darkness fell, the SUVs remained. Marcus didn't sleep, couldn't sleep, just watched and waited for whatever would come next. His phone buzzed with a text from Kate. We're safe at a hotel. Emma's asking when she can come home. He didn't know how to answer that. When would home be safe again? When would any of this be over? At midnight, his phone rang again. Raymond Frost. Marcus, I'm calling to warn you. Pike's people, they're not going to wait much longer. I know how they operate. They'll make a move soon, probably tonight. You need to get out of there. Why would you warn me? You threatened Emma yourself. Frost's voice was grim. I wanted to scare you, not get you killed. This is beyond what I intended. Pike plays a different game than me. He doesn't make threats, he just acts. And when he does, people disappear. Then help me. Tell me what Thompson and your grandfather were really involved in. They were patriots. Frost's voice held old bitterness. They were trying to save America. But Pike's ancestors turned it into something dirty, something criminal. My grandfather spent his life trying to expose it, but he was crushed. Thompson went into hiding, scattered his evidence. And now Pike wants to make sure that evidence never surfaces. The line went dead before Marcus could respond. He stood in the darkness of his farmhouse, surrounded by enemies, protecting secrets a century old, and realized he had reached a decision point. He could surrender, hand everything over to Pike, take the money and hope the billionaire kept his word. Or he could fight, risk everything, and trust that truth had power even against overwhelming opposition. Sarah's voice echoed in his memory. The best things cost almost nothing. The right thing is still right, even when it's hard. He knew what she would choose, and standing alone in the darkness, Marcus made the same choice. He would fight, he would protect Thompson's legacy, and he would trust that somewhere, somehow, justice still mattered, even if it cost him everything. The siege lasted 2 days. Pike's men never advanced but never left, maintaining a constant presence that ground away at Marcus's nerves and resolve. He rationed food, slept in shifts measured in minutes rather than hours, and kept the shotgun always within reach. Victoria called every few hours with updates. She had found 5 of the 10 tractors now, each one containing more evidence, more documentation, more pieces of the puzzle Thompson had scattered across the Midwest. On the morning of the 3rd day, the SUVs pulled away. Marcus watched them go with suspicion rather than relief. Pike wouldn't simply give up. This was a new tactic, a shift in strategy. The answer came an hour later when Victoria called, her voice tight with panic. "Mr. Kane, they've found me. I'm at the 6th tractor location in Kansas and there are men coming. Same black SUVs. I'm leaving now, but I don't think I can outrun them." "Where are you exactly?" Victoria rattled off coordinates. Marcus plugged them into his map. 2 hours away, too far to help in time. His mind raced through options. "Send me everything you found. Every document, every photo. Upload it now to our secure server. Then ditch your phone and run." "Already uploading." Victoria's voice was shaking. "Mr. Kane, I'm sorry. I thought I was being careful. You've done more than I could have asked. Now focus on staying alive." After she hung up, Marcus made a decision that felt both inevitable and terrifying. He couldn't win this by hiding. He couldn't protect Emma or Victoria or himself by staying trapped on his farm. The only path forward was through confrontation. He called the number Pike had used to contact him. The billionaire answered on the first ring. "Mr. Pike." Marcus kept his voice steady. "I'm ready to talk." "I thought you might be." Pike sounded satisfied. "Where's Dr. Cross right now?" "That's what I'm calling about. I want a meeting, face-to-face, you, me, and whatever deal you're proposing. But first, you call off your people. Let Victoria go. She's not part of this. She made herself part of it." "But very well." Pike paused and Marcus heard muffled conversation. "My team will disengage. Dr. Cross is free to go. Now this meeting, I assume you're not foolish enough to come alone or to some isolated location where accidents might occur." "I'm not." Marcus had already planned this. Tomorrow, noon, the Jocelyn Art Museum in Omaha. Public space, crowds, security cameras. You can bring advisors, but no more than 3 people total. I'll have Victoria with me. We talk, we negotiate, we find a solution. Pike was quiet for a moment. "Very well. The museum. Noon tomorrow. Come prepared to be reasonable, Mr. Kane. This is your last chance at a peaceful resolution." After hanging up, Marcus immediately called Victoria. "Where are you?" "Just crossed the state line heading north. The SUV stopped following about 10 minutes ago." Her breath came fast, adrenaline fading into exhaustion. "What did you do?" "I arranged a meeting. Tomorrow at noon in Omaha. Pike wants to deal." "Mr. Kane, that's walking into a trap." "Maybe, but it's a trap in public with witnesses. Better than being picked off separately." Marcus explained his reasoning. "We can't keep running, and we can't win a war of attrition against someone with Pike's resources. So we flip the script. We go to him on our terms in a setting where he can't just make us disappear." Victoria was quiet, processing. "All right, I'm in, but we prepare for every possibility." They spent the rest of the day planning. Marcus had a friend install a secure cloud backup system that would automatically release all their evidence if he and Victoria didn't check in within 24 hours of the meeting. He recorded another video detailing Pike's threats and surveillance. He created multiple redundant systems, each one a failsafe in case Pike tried to eliminate them and bury the truth. That evening, Marcus drove to Kate's hotel in Omaha. He hadn't seen Emma in 3 days, and the reunion nearly broke him. She launched herself into his arms, Dr. Scales crushed between them, and he held her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. Daddy, I missed you so much. I missed you too, sweetheart. More than you know. Kate pulled him aside while Emma played in the other room. Marcus, you look terrible. When is this going to end? Tomorrow, one way or another. Marcus explained the meeting, watching his sister's face go pale. You're meeting with the man who's been threatening you? Marcus, that's insane. Call the police. Call the FBI. Call someone. The FBI's been neutralized. The police have no jurisdiction over what Pike's done. This is the only way, Kate. I face him directly or we spend the rest of our lives running. What if he kills you? Then everything we've found gets released automatically. The truth comes out, Pike's family reputation is destroyed, and maybe that's enough deterrent to keep him from trying. Marcus pulled her into a hug. If something happens to me, you take Emma and disappear. New city, new names, new lives. There's money in an account I'll give you access to, enough to start over completely. Don't talk like that. You're coming back. Marcus didn't make a promise he might not be able to keep. That night, he lay in the hotel room's uncomfortable chair, watching Emma sleep, memorizing everything about her. The way she curled around Dr. Scales, the soft sound of her breathing, the complete trust and innocence of childhood. This was what he was fighting for. Not gold or truth or justice in the abstract. This specific little girl who deserved a future free from fear. Morning came too quickly. Marcus dressed carefully in the only suit he owned, cleaned and pressed for Sarah's funeral 4 years ago and untouched since. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Thinner than he remembered, harder, with eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. Victoria met him at the museum parking lot at 11:30. She looked as exhausted as he felt, but determined, her bag full of documentation and her jaw set. Ready? As I'll ever be. They entered the Jocelyn together, a beautiful Art Deco building that seemed like a strange setting for confronting a billionaire criminal. The museum was moderately busy on a Tuesday afternoon, tourists and art students moving between galleries in quiet contemplation. Marcus and Victoria made their way to the agreed meeting point, a gallery featuring American landscapes, wide-open spaces rendered in oil that mocked their current trapped circumstances. Jonathan Pike arrived precisely at noon with 3 people. An older woman who radiated dignified authority, a lawyer type in an expensive suit, and to Marcus's shock, Raymond Frost looking uncomfortable in clothes that didn't fit his rural persona. Mr. Kane, Dr. Cross, Pike extended his hand with the easy confidence of someone used to controlling every situation. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Allow me to introduce my mother, Eleanor Pike, our family attorney, David Strauss, and I believe you know Mr. Frost. Marcus ignored the offered hand. Let's skip the pleasantries. What exactly are you offering? Direct. I appreciate that. Pike gestured to a bench facing a painting of Nebraska prairie. Shall we sit? They arranged themselves, Pike's party on one side, Marcus and Victoria on the other, like negotiating teams prepared for battle. Other museum visitors drifted past, oblivious to the high-stakes drama unfolding beside them. Pike spoke first, his voice measured and reasonable. Mr. Kane, I'm prepared to offer you $15 million. Cash transfer, completed by end of business today. In exchange, you surrender all gold bars, all documents, and you sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. The matter is closed, permanently and completely. $15 million. The amount was staggering, enough to transform not just Marcus's life, but generations of his family. But there was a catch. There was always a catch. And the truth? What happens to the evidence of your family's treason? It becomes irrelevant. Pike's expression didn't change. Ancient history that benefits no one by being revealed. My great-great-grandfather made decisions during a chaotic time. Whether those decisions were right or wrong is immaterial a century later. The only people hurt by exposure are my family, your family through the legal warfare that would inevitably follow, and the historical reputation of institutions that no longer exist in their original form. You mean you want to keep profiting from blood money while erasing the evidence of how it was obtained? I mean, I want to close a chapter that should have ended decades ago. Pike leaned forward slightly. Mr. Kane, let's be pragmatic. You're a farmer facing foreclosure, a single father trying to provide for his daughter. I'm offering you generational wealth. The ability to give Emma everything she deserves. Education at the finest schools, opportunities you never had, security for her entire life. all in exchange for gold that isn't legally yours and documents that will only bring you years of litigation and danger. Eleanor Pike spoke for the first time, her voice cultured and cold. My son is being more than fair, Mr. Kane. Most men in his position would simply take what they wanted. The fact that he's offering to purchase it shows remarkable restraint. Or remarkable fear. Victoria's voice cut sharp. He's not offering $15 million out of generosity. He's offering it because exposure would cost his family far more. Pike Financial would collapse if investors knew the company was built on wartime treason. You'd lose billions. Alleged treason. The lawyer Strauss spoke up. Unproven accusations based on documents of questionable provenance from a man with documented mental instability in his later years. Walter Thompson's claims have never been substantiated because they're false. This is a shakedown based on historical fiction. Raymond Frost cleared his throat uncomfortably. It's not fiction. My grandfather's journals confirm everything Thompson documented. The conspiracy was real. What Pike's ancestor did was real. He looked at Jonathan Pike. And my family has as much claim to this as yours. You'll be compensated appropriately. Pike dismissed Frost with barely a glance. Now, Mr. Kane, I need your answer. $15 million. Sign the papers and walk away wealthy. Refuse, and I promise you'll regret it for however long you live, which I assure you won't be comfortable or lengthy. The threat was clear despite the civilized setting. Marcus felt Victoria tense beside him. This was the moment. Take the money and bury the truth, or refuse and face whatever Pike would unleash. Before Marcus could answer, Victoria spoke. There's something you should know, Mr. Pike. We're not the only ones who have this evidence. We've distributed copies to 17 different journalists, historians, and legal experts. Each one has instructions to publish if we don't check in regularly. Killing us or silencing us only ensures the truth comes out faster. Bluff. Strauss looked at Victoria with disdain. You've had this evidence for less than a week. You haven't had time to create that kind of distribution network. Try me. Victoria met his stare. I've spent 5 years building relationships in the academic community, specifically for this kind of revelation. One email from me in Operation Ironclad becomes the biggest historical scandal of the decade. Your family's entire fortune, every political connection, every shred of respectability, gone in 24 hours. Pike's expression finally showed cracks, a flicker of uncertainty. You're bluffing. Maybe. But are you willing to bet $40 billion on that assumption? Marcus stood, Victoria rising beside him. Here's my counteroffer. You confess publicly to your family's role in Operation Ironclad. You establish a foundation using $20 billion of your wealth to compensate descendants of WWI veterans. And you step down as CEO of Pike Financial. Do that and the evidence stays private. Refuse and we publish everything tomorrow. The audacity of the demand hung in the air. Eleanor Pike's face went white with rage. This is extortion. No, Marcus kept his voice level. This is justice. Your family profited from treason for a century. It's time to pay the debt. Jonathan Pike stood slowly, his composure completely restored. A bold gambit, Mr. Kane, but ultimately futile. Tyle, you're still thinking like someone who believes truth matters, that evidence and morality carry weight in the real world. Let me educate you about power. He gestured and 2 security guards appeared from the gallery entrance, not museum security, but Pike's men in civilian clothes. You're not leaving this building with those documents. We'll take them now, peacefully if you cooperate, forcefully if you don't. And then we'll have a different conversation about what happens to people who threaten my family. Marcus's hand moved toward his jacket where he had concealed a small recording device. But before he could activate it, new voices cut through the tension. FBI, nobody move. Agent Sarah Brennan entered the gallery flanked by 6 federal agents in tactical gear, weapons drawn but pointed at the floor. Jonathan Pike, Eleanor Pike, you're under arrest for conspiracy, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice. Pike's face went from confidence to shock to rage in seconds. You have no authority here. One phone call and your career is over. Brennan smiled coldly. Already made those calls, Mr. Pike. 6 different supervisors tried to shut down this investigation. But you got sloppy. You threatened a 7-year-old child. You tried to intimidate federal witnesses, and you did it all on monitored lines. She held up a tablet showing transcripts and audio waveforms. Every threat, every bribe attempt, every conspiracy to obstruct justice, all documented, All admissible. That's illegal surveillance. Strauss stepped forward. We'll have it all thrown out. Brennan moved closer to Pike. Your lawyers can try, but here's what you don't understand. I've been investigating your family for 6 years. My father was a journalist who got too close to Pike Financial 20 years ago. Died in a car accident that was ruled suspicious but never solved. I've made destroying your empire my life's work, and Mr. Kane just handed me everything I needed. She gestured and agents moved in, handcuffing both Pikes while reading them their rights. Raymond Frost backed away, hands raised, making it clear he wasn't part of this. Strauss was already on his phone calling reinforcements that wouldn't arrive in time to matter. Brennan turned to Marcus and Victoria. We need you both for debriefing. And Mr. Kane, your daughter is in protective custody now. We picked her up from the hotel 2 hours ago with your sister's cooperation. She's safe at a secure facility. The relief hit Marcus like a wave, so intense it nearly buckled his knees. Emma was truly safe. Not just relatively safe, not hopefully safe, but in FBI protection where Pike couldn't touch her. As agents led Pike toward the exit, the billionaire stopped beside Marcus. His voice was low, venomous. This isn't over. My family has survived worse than one setback. We'll be out on bail tonight, and when we are, I promise you'll regret this. Maybe. Marcus met his stare, but at least the truth is out. That's what Thompson wanted. That's what Emma will grow up knowing. Pike's expression twisted into something cruel. You really think you've won? That arresting me changes anything? He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that only Marcus could hear. You want to know the real secret? The one even Thompson didn't understand? My great-great-grandfather didn't steal from Thompson. Thompson stole from him. Because Thompson was my great-great-great-grandfather too. We're family, Mr. Kane. This gold, this conspiracy, it was never about outsiders stealing government assets. It was a family business that tore itself apart over greed. And you've just reignited a blood feud that's been buried for a century. The revelation hit Marcus like a punch. Pike was Thompson's descendant? That meant the entire narrative was more complicated, more tangled than anyone had understood. Thompson hadn't been a whistleblower exposing corruption. He'd been a criminal who betrayed his own family. Brennan pulled Pike away before Marcus could respond, but the billionaire's final words echoed. A blood feud, a family torn apart by greed and betrayal, and Marcus had walked right into the middle of it. Victoria touched his arm. Are you okay? Marcus shook his head. I don't know. Everything just got more complicated. They followed Brennan and the agents out of the museum, past shocked tourists and confused security guards. Outside, news vans were already arriving, cameras filming as one of America's wealthiest men was loaded into a federal vehicle in handcuffs. The story was breaking in real time, spreading across social media and news networks before Pike's lawyers could organize a response. At the FBI field office, Marcus and Victoria spent hours in debriefing. They turned over all physical evidence, all documentation, explained everything from the initial discovery to the meeting at the museum. Brennan's team was thorough and professional, building an airtight case. We have enough for RICO charges. Brennan reviewed her notes, the documented threats, the surveillance, the attempts to obstruct justice. Pike gave us everything we needed by being so aggressive. She looked at Marcus. You'll need to testify at trial. That could take months, maybe over a year, and you'll need protection during that time. What about Emma? Can she come home? Eventually, but not immediately. Pike will make bail, his family will regroup, and they'll come after you harder. We have a safe house where you can stay with your daughter while we work through the legal process. How long? Months at minimum. I'm sorry, Mr. Kane, but you did the right thing. You stood up to power most people don't even know exists. Or I stumbled into something I didn't understand and made it worse. Marcus rubbed his face. Pike's final words, about them being family, about Thompson being the real thief. Is that true? Brennan pulled up files on her computer. We're still verifying, but preliminary research suggests yes. Walter Thompson and the original Pike were half-brothers, same father, different mothers. They went into business together, then had a falling out. It's possible Thompson did betray the family partnership. That would explain why he spent his life hiding instead of exposing the conspiracy directly. So I've been protecting a thief's legacy? You've been protecting the truth. Whatever Thompson's motives, the evidence you found proves American industrialists profited from both sides during WWI. That matters regardless of family drama. The drive to the safe house took an hour. When Marcus finally saw Emma again, she threw herself into his arms with such force he staggered. "Daddy, the FBI lady said we're staying in a special house for a while. Is it because of the bad people?" "Yes, sweetheart. But they can't hurt us here. We're safe now. Dr. Scales kept us safe. He knew you'd come back." Emma pulled back to look at him seriously. "Did you do it, Daddy? Did you stop the bad people?" "I think so. I hope so." Marcus kissed her forehead, but it might take a while to be completely sure. That night, lying in an unfamiliar bed in a government safe house, Marcus stared at the ceiling and processed everything that had happened. He had found treasure that wasn't treasure. He had exposed a conspiracy that was more complicated than anyone knew. He had made enemies who wouldn't simply disappear because they'd been arrested. But Emma was safe. The truth was out. And whatever came next, at least Marcus had chosen principle over profit, courage over comfort. Sarah would have been proud of that. He hoped it would be enough. Outside, federal agents maintained their watch. And somewhere in a detention facility, Jonathan Pike sat in a cell, planning his next move in a game that had just begun. 6 months transformed everything. The trial became a media sensation, dominating headlines as prosecutors laid out a century of secrets. Thompson's journal, the gold, Marcus's testimony, all combined into an overwhelming case that no amount of legal maneuvering could dismiss. Jonathan Pike was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. His mother, Eleanor, received 15. Raymond Frost, who had cooperated with prosecutors and provided additional family records, received 5 years with possibility of parole. Pike financial collapsed. Investors fled, politicians returned campaign donations, and the empire that had lasted 5 generations dissolved in months. The company's assets were seized, liquidated, distributed to various claimants and restitution funds. But victory felt hollow. Marcus sat in the safe house living room watching news coverage of Pike's sentencing and felt only exhaustion. Emma was safe. The truth was out. Justice had been served. So why did he feel so empty? Victoria visited regularly, working on her book about Operation Ironclad and the conspiracy it had spawned. The manuscript had attracted fierce bidding from publishers, with her advance alone enough to fund years of research. She had offered to split it with Marcus, but he had refused. This was her work, her grandfather's vindication. He wanted no part of profiting from it. The legal questions about the gold took longer to resolve. Federal courts determined it was government property, but Marcus was entitled to a finder's fee. 15% was standard. With the gold valued at nearly $5 million, that meant $750,000 for Marcus. Then came the revelation that changed everything again. Walter Thompson's will, sealed and never properly probated, contained a provision. "If anyone finds what I have hidden and brings the truth to light, facing down those who would keep it buried, they inherit the remainder of my estate. All property, all assets, all that I owned beyond the gold itself." The Thompson estate comprised 400 acres of prime Nebraska farmland, mineral rights worth millions, and several commercial properties in what had become valuable urban areas. Total value approached $30 million. Marcus Kane, broke farmer, who had bought a tractor for $1, was suddenly worth over $30 million. The day the inheritance was finalized, Marcus sat with Emma on the porch of the Thompson farmhouse. They had moved in a month earlier, after the FBI determined the threat from remaining Pike family members had diminished. The house had been restored, the land prepared for planting. It was spring now, 6 months after that auction that had changed everything. Emma ran through the fields, Dr. Scales tucked under one arm, her laughter carrying on the wind. She was 8 now, taller, her hair longer, still possessing those green eyes that reminded Marcus so much of Sarah. Victoria joined him on the porch, 2 coffee mugs in hand. "Big day. How does it feel to be officially wealthy?" "Strange." Marcus accepted the coffee. "I spent so long being poor that I don't know how to process having money. Part of me keeps waiting for it to disappear, for someone to say it was all a mistake." "It's real." Victoria sat beside him. "You earned it, not just by finding the gold, but by choosing to do the right thing with it. Thompson's will was specific. The inheritance goes to someone who faced down the conspiracy. That's you. I had a lot of help. You, Brennan, even Frost in his way. I couldn't have done it alone. None of us could have." "That's the point." Victoria smiled. Powerful conspiracies require collective effort to expose. One person can start it, but victory requires collaboration. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Emma play. Marcus had started a foundation using some of his new wealth, providing financial assistance to farming families facing medical crises. It felt right, using money that came from exposing greed to help people who struggled with the same problems that had nearly destroyed him. Victoria had insisted he also set up a college fund for Emma, invest for the future, take care of his own family first. He had done that too, though it felt strange to think about Emma's college fund when she still believed in the magic of stuffed alligators. Any word from Pike's lawyers, Marcus asked. Endless appeals, Victoria shrugged. They'll keep fighting for years, but the evidence is overwhelming. He's not getting out early, she paused. There is one thing you should know. The revelation about Thompson and Pike being half-brothers, that's generated new research. Historians are re-examining the whole period, looking at how many other American fortunes might have similar origins. You think there are more conspiracies? I think Operation Ironclad wasn't unique. It was probably one of many similar schemes. Victoria's expression grew serious. What you uncovered, it's changing how we understand American economic history, the relationship between government and industry during wartime, the origins of generational wealth. This is going to echo for decades. That thought overwhelmed Marcus. He had just wanted to fix his tractor, save his farm. Now he had sparked a historical reckoning that would outlive him. Emma ran up to the porch, breathless and glowing. Daddy, can we go look at the robot? I want to show Dr. Scales where we found the treasure. Sure, sweetheart. Marcus stood and extended his hand. Let's go see the Colossus. They walked to the barn where the steam tractor had been fully restored. Its green paint gleamed, brass fittings polished. The machine returned to something approaching its original glory. It stood as a monument now, no longer a working tractor, but a memorial to secrets kept and finally revealed. Emma climbed onto the operator's platform, settling into the position she had occupied that morning 6 months ago when their world had changed. Does Mr. Thompson know we found his secret? I think so. Marcus joined her on the platform. I think wherever he is, he knows the truth finally came out. That's what he wanted. Was he a good person or a bad person? The question cut to the heart of everything Marcus still struggled with. That's complicated, Em. He did some bad things. He stole from his family, betrayed people who trusted him. But he also spent his life trying to make it right, protecting evidence that exposed an even bigger crime. Sometimes people are both good and bad at the same time. Like how I'm sometimes naughty but you still love me? Marcus laughed. Yeah, kind of like that. We all make mistakes. What matters is whether we try to fix them. Emma seemed satisfied with this answer. She hugged Dr. Scales and looked out over the farm that was now theirs. I think Mama would like it here. It's big and has lots of sky. The mention of Sarah made Marcus's throat tight. I think you're right. Your mama always said the best things don't cost much. And she was right. The best things we have, like you and me being together, like knowing we did something brave, those didn't cost anything except courage. Did it cost courage to buy the robot for $1? It cost courage to do what came after. When people threatened us and I had to decide whether to hide or fight, that's when courage mattered. Emma nodded with the seriousness she brought to important topics. I'm glad you fought, Daddy, even though it was scary. Me too, sweetheart, me too. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Marcus walked the property alone. 400 acres that had once belonged to Walter Thompson, now his through a chain of events that still felt surreal. The land stretched to the horizon under a vast Nebraska sky, the same sky that had watched Thompson hide his secrets a century ago. Marcus thought about legacy, about what we leave behind. Sarah had left Emma's moral clarity, that unwavering sense of right and wrong. Thompson had left a puzzle and a burden, evidence of betrayal that demanded courage to expose. And now Marcus would leave Emma something different. Security, yes. Wealth, certainly. But more importantly, the knowledge that her father had stood for something, had chosen truth over comfort, principle over profit. His phone rang. Victoria. Turn on the news, any channel. Marcus went inside and found a television. Every major network was covering the same story. Congress had passed the Thompson Transparency Act, requiring corporations over 100 years old to open their historical records to public scrutiny. The bill had been championed by progressive senators who cited Marcus's discovery as proof that corporate secrecy enabled generational injustice. This is because of you. Victoria's voice held wonder. Your $1 investment might rewrite how we understand corporate accountability. I just wanted to fix my tractor. Marcus sat heavily on the couch. How did this become about changing the world? Because sometimes small actions have large consequences. You chose honesty when lying would have been easier. That choice rippled outward. She paused. That's what legacy means, Marcus, not the money or the land. The choices we make that echo beyond us. After hanging up, Marcus climbed the stairs to Emma's room. She slept peacefully, Dr. Scales tucked under her chin, completely secure in the knowledge that her father would protect her. Looking at her now, Marcus understood what Sarah had meant about the best things costing almost nothing. This moment, this quiet certainty of love and safety, the knowledge that he had been tested and had not failed. These things had cost him everything except money. They had cost courage and fear and sleepless nights. But they were worth infinitely more than gold. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Raymond Frost arrived with his wife, a kind-faced woman who brought homemade pie and apologies. I was wrong to threaten you. Frost extended his hand and Marcus shook it after a moment's hesitation. My family spent so long bitter about what Thompson did that we couldn't see the bigger crime he was exposing. You did what my grandfather couldn't. You brought the truth out. I'm grateful for that. What will you do now? Serve my time, make amends. Frost looked at the Colossus standing beside the barn. And when I get out, I'd like to help you maintain that machine. Keep it running as a memorial. If you'll have me. Marcus thought about cycles of revenge and redemption, about how hatred could poison generations while forgiveness might heal them. I'll have you when you're ready. Over the following months, Marcus settled into his new life. He hired workers to actually farm the land, taking on the role of manager rather than laborer. He established routines with Emma, enrolled her in a good school, took her to museums and parks and all the places he could afford now. They traveled to visit Kate, who had weathered the storm of Marcus's notoriety with grace and humor. But something was missing. Marcus had money and security and justice. He had Emma safe and healthy, but he was also lonely in ways that wealth couldn't address. Sarah had been gone 5 years now, and while the grief had softened, the absence remained. Victoria noticed during one of her research visits, "You're not happy." "I'm grateful," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference. You're allowed to want more than safety. You're allowed to want companionship, even happiness." She studied him carefully. "Sarah wouldn't want you to spend the rest of your life alone." "I'm not alone. I have Emma." "You know what I mean." Victoria's expression was gentle but direct. "You're 43 years old. You have decades ahead of you. Living as a memorial to someone who died doesn't honor them. Living fully honors them." The conversation stayed with Marcus. He thought about Sarah, about what she would want for him. She had been pragmatic even in death, planning her funeral, organizing affairs, telling him clearly that he needed to move on eventually, to find happiness again. A year after Pike's conviction, Marcus attended the opening of an exhibition at the Joslin Museum. Operation Ironclad, a century of secrets revealed, featured artifacts from Thompson's cache, documents explaining the conspiracy, and a historical analysis written by Victoria. The Colossus itself had been loaned to the museum for 6 months, standing in the central gallery as a monument to secrets in their revelation. Emma stood beside him, staring up at the machine that had changed their lives. "It looks different here, more important somehow." "That's because people understand what it means now." Marcus knelt beside her. "It's not just an old tractor anymore. It's a reminder that truth matters, that courage matters. Because you were brave, because I tried to be, and because a lot of people helped me." He gestured at Victoria across the gallery, speaking with museum officials. Dr. Cross, Agent Brennan, even Aunt Kate. We all did this together. The exhibition attracted national attention. Historians debated its implications. Students studied it. And slowly, grudgingly, the narrative around early 20th century industrialism began to shift. The Thompson Transparency Act uncovered other scandals, other fortunes built on questionable foundations. What Marcus had started rippled through academia and policy, forcing a reckoning that was overdue by decades. 2 years after the initial discovery, Marcus stood on his porch watching the sunset, Emma beside him, both of them older now but still together. She was 10, reading at a high school level, showing her mother's intelligence and her father's determination. Dr. Scales was starting to show his age, fabric worn from constant companionship, but Emma refused to replace him. Daddy, do you think we'll have more adventures? I hope not. Marcus smiled. I think quiet is good, don't you? Quiet's okay. Emma leaned against him, but the adventure was good too, because we help people. That's what Mama would say, that helping people is always an adventure worth having. Sarah's wisdom filtered through their daughter's understanding. Marcus pulled Emma close, feeling the solid warmth of her, the evidence of what he had fought for and protected. You're right. And you know what? We're still helping people. The foundation, the transparency act, the truth being out there. That's the adventure continuing, even though the scary parts are over. I like that kind of adventure better. Adventures where nobody threatens us and we just get to be happy. Marcus kissed the top of her head. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. As darkness fell and stars emerged, Marcus thought about the journey. A $1 bid that had led to millions in wealth, yes, but more importantly, to truth revealed and justice served. He thought about Thompson, about a man who had spent his life carrying the weight of secrets, trying to make amends for betrayal. In the end, Thompson had succeeded, not by living long enough to see his vindication, but by creating a puzzle that would require someone brave or foolish enough to solve. Marcus had been both. And now, sitting with his daughter under Nebraska stars, he understood that he would do it all again. The fear, the danger, the impossible choices, because the alternative was living with compromised integrity. And Sarah had taught him that some costs were too high. The iron inheritance had been claimed, its mysteries solved, its gold distributed, its truth revealed. What remained was simpler, but no less precious. A father and daughter, land to work, memories to honor, futures to build. Emma was right. After all the chaos and fear and revelation, happiness was the story worth telling. In the barn, the Colossus stood silent, returned from the museum, its purpose fulfilled. And in the house, Marcus and Emma began the evening ritual of dinner and homework and bedtime stories, the ordinary magic of a life rebuilt from ruins. The best things had cost almost nothing. The right thing had been worth everything. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you got both. Thompson would have understood. He had spent his life protecting something more valuable than wealth. Marcus had done the same. And in the end, that was the only inheritance that truly mattered. The kind you could pass to your daughter with pride. The kind that endured beyond iron and time and the machinations of powerful men. The kind that was simply and profoundly worth living for. 3 years after finding the gold, Marcus received an unexpected package. No return address, postmarked from Montana. Inside was a newspaper clipping about a Colossus steam tractor being sold at auction, and a handwritten note on aged paper. Mr. Kane, you proved yourself worthy of my trust. The puzzle remains incomplete. 9 machines still hold their secrets. When you're ready for the next chapter, you'll know where to look. The map shows more than one constellation. Truth has many layers. Respectfully, a friend. Marcus showed it to Emma, now 11 and starting to think about middle school. Another adventure, Daddy? He thought about it, about treasure hunts and conspiracies and powerful enemies, about safety and quiet and the life they had built. Then he looked at his daughter's eyes, bright with curiosity and courage inherited from both parents. Maybe someday, sweetheart, when you're older and we can do it together, as a team. I'd like that, Emma smiled. Dr. Scales says he's ready whenever we are. Marcus laughed and tucked the note away in a drawer. Someday, perhaps, they would pursue the remaining secrets. But not today. Today was for living, for enjoying the peace they had earned, for being a family. The iron inheritance was complete, but the iron legacy had just begun. And that, Marcus thought, was exactly how it should be. Some stories ended, others simply paused, waiting for the next generation to pick up the thread. Outside, the Nebraska wind swept across 400 acres of farmland. The Colossus stood watch over dreams realized and promises kept. And in the house, a father and daughter planned their futures, building on a foundation of courage and truth and love that no amount of money could purchase. The best things, Sarah had said, cost almost nothing. She had been right, as she usually was. And Marcus Kane, once broke and desperate, now wealthy and secure, understood at last that the fortune he had found was never really about gold. It was about this moment, this peace, this knowledge that when tested he had not failed. That was the true inheritance, and it was priceless.